See, now personally,
Yeah.
as you were being offended earlier by saying the gentleman over there was being judgmental of
Yeah.
your intentions,
Yeah.
you're doing the same thing.
Oh no, what did I first do to you, sir? I asked you a lot of hard questions, didn't I?
But you're still...
I asked you a lot of hard questions, and I hate to tell you, sir, you flunked them one after another. Let's be honest. You came out here posing like the Gospels were not historically reliable. And so I said, fine. Give me the test you used to determine historicity. What are the studies that you've done on the New Testament to convince you that the Gospels are not reliable? And what did you give me, sir? You gave me a goose egg. That's what you gave me, Zippo. And you're right, I opened up on you after you had the audacity to expose yourself like that. You did it, I didn't do it, you did it. I didn't judge you, you judged yourself, sir. I asked you, what have you studied? You told me C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. I said, good. Sir, that book has nothing to do with the historicity of the Gospels.
You're about to witness one of the most intense and confrontational debates Cliffe from Give Me an Answer has ever faced, where he even lost his temper with a student. Buckle up, because this discussion dives deep into challenging questions and hard-hitting arguments. Let's get into it.
Yes, sir.
What do you say about Anselm's ontological argument for the existence of God?
Summarize it for me, could you?
Okay, you have to define God as that than which no greater can be conceived. Then you state that, if you agree with me on that, you have to say, well, God can only exist either in A, our mind, or B, in reality. And then C, you say that reality must be better than in our mind, and thus, since God must be no greater than that which can be conceived, God must exist, because to not would be less than what we would define him as.
Because I've never been impressed with the ontological argument, I've never used it.
Okay, I just didn't know if you had heard of it.
Right. Oh yeah, of course I've heard of it, I've read it. I've never been very impressed with it, so I've never used it.
Okay, well, what I was going to ask is, did you think that Nietzsche disproved it by saying that existence is a quality instead? I was just curious on your philosophical...
Right. No, I don't think... Nietzsche was brilliant, obviously, but I don't think he disproved it, no. But I think he raised some good objections to it, yes. What do you think about Jesus Christ?
What do I think?
Yeah.
I personally am an atheist.
Really? Why?
Why? I grew up in a Southern Baptist family, read the Bible 3 or 4 times at this point, and never was impressed.
Okay.
To be honest.
Who does impress you, or what impresses you?
No higher power that I have heard of.
Okay, now you've told me the negative. Now tell me the positive. What are you living for, who are you living for, and why?
I guess nothing. Whatever I
okay, good.
would like.
Ooh, okay. I think that second part was a little more honest there. Obviously, when you stand there and tell me that you're living for nothing, you're lying to me and to yourself, right? You know that, right? You can't be dressed the way you are. You can't be going through what you're going through as a student here at the University of Arizona without being a pretty motivated person. So let's be real honest. You ain't living for nothing. The people who are living for nothing are committing suicide right now. You have some type of motive. You're living for someone or something. And that's why I liked your second statement, which was?
I guess I'm living for myself.
Okay, good. You're living for yourself. Okay, now what does that mean?
Whatever I feel like doing, I guess. I mean, like, I establish my own goals, I establish what I want to do, and if I don't want to do it, I don't do it, I suppose.
Good. I think that's pretty clear, isn't it? I like that. Thank you for your honesty.
You're welcome.
You decide the purpose for your life. You decide your goals. You decide what's right and wrong. You're the center. Right?
Okay.
Thanks for your honesty. I like that. For myself, I am like you. I find that alternative pretty attractive. But I keep on bumping into the limits of my knowledge. I keep on bumping into the fact that at times I know what's good, and instead of doing that good, I do the opposite. And I'm also knocking into aging process. Not a lot of fun. I used to play basketball a lot better than I do now. And I begin to realize that death is the ultimate obstacle. So, I begin to ask myself, in light of my limitations, in light of my finitude, in light of my moral failures, in light of my inability to beat death, am I really more reliable than Jesus Christ? How do you answer that?
I don't really think you could rely on Jesus Christ. Personally, I've never met him. Personally, can't establish how reliable he truly would be. Just as you said, you can't establish that the Bible is infallible. I mean, as with any book. So I agree with you on that stance. So you would have to say that if you're only relying on something that you can't say is false, I mean, or that you can't say, I mean, is true. Sorry. And then so to say that you're relying wholly on a book would be, you know, just as good as relying on your own opinion.
Okay. Now, you're right. I think to put your faith in a book would be pretty painful. But Jesus doesn't call us to put our faith in a book. He calls us to come to him. And the historical evidence is the dude lived a sinless life. In fact, he lived the type of life that I've tried to live, but I've miserably failed. So that kind of demands some respect from me. I've tried to live that way, and I've repeatedly failed. I blow it, but he didn't blow it. Then, the historical evidence is, 3 days after he died, he rose from the dead. He beat death. Wow. That's kind of impressive. So based on his lifestyle and based on his resurrection, don't you think the evidence is he is more reliable than you and I put together are?
But the evidence is coming from a source, at which...
I hope it is.
I know you... No, I'm saying, just as you said, he doesn't say rely on the book. But the only way you even know that he's saying anything is through a book. Which
Good.
Still are telling me that you can't say is completely true.
Oh, that's great. I love it. Because I know that you have such intellectual honesty. That because you grew up in a Southern Baptist home, because you heard all about Christ, but because you had such a blossoming intellect, what you did was, you exercised critical thinking. You analyzed the text to the point of finding out that indeed the Gospels are not historically reliable. Please tell me about that study and the evidence. I'm waiting, my Southern Baptist friend.
I didn't say that I had done that.
How tragic. How tragic in light of the fact that you have the audacity to tell me that the reason you cannot trust Christ is because the Gospels are not reliable. How tragic in light of the fact that you grew up in a Southern Baptist home, but have seen the light that there is no God. How on earth did you get to that position if it wasn't through an honest critique of the historical documents that showed you clearly that they were not reliable?
The thing is that it's as reliable as any other book I have read.
Really?
About anything.
Good. Why? What did you study that showed you that?
My own opinion.
My own opinion.
My perspective, I don't see how you...
So what you do is you just read a book, and then you get this feeling. And the feeling is, it's just as reliable as all the other books I've read. Is that the way you go about the academic process here?
Not exactly.
Good. So tell me more.
Okay, I have read, oh God, what's it called? C.S. Lewis, it's...
Good.
The Carpenter,
That's Josh McDowell.
Is it, no, what's the one that C.S. Lewis wrote?
Mere Christianity?
Yes.
Great.
I read that like 5 years ago.
Good.
I'll be honest, it's been a while. But,
Yep.
I mean, the thing is that other books arguing for its reliability did not seem to fulfill the argument to my standard. I mean, I'm a math major, so
Great.
I know what constitutes a proof.
Good.
I've never really come to that point.
Excellent. And you as a math major understand very clearly that if you were to take mathematics over to the history department and demand that history professors mathematically prove that Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States, that would be intellectually dishonest, wouldn't it? So you would never do anything that childish. So what are the tests that you've used to show us from an honest intellectual standpoint that the Gospels are not reliable?
I'll be honest, I've not used an actual test.
Thank you for your honesty. Okay, sir, now be honest. So why did you reject the Gospels as not giving you accurate history?
Because I have nothing that says it is accurate.
Good. Good.
I suppose it's proof by contradiction.
No, let's be real honest. You know the proof, bud, and so do I. I want to do my own thing, and I could give a rip about God and Jesus because I'm going to go out and cut loose, man. I'm going to be free of those chains of Southern Baptisthood that so limited me growing up. Man, I'm at the University of Arizona, man. Forget about honest intellectual pursuit of God and Christ and the Bible, man. Let's just live it up. Why? Because it's thrilling. It's absolutely thrilling to write the rules, because I love to play God. Come on, bud, let's be honest.
See, now personally, as you were being offended earlier by saying the gentleman over there was being judgmental of your intentions, you're doing the same thing.
Oh no, what did I first do to you, sir? I asked you a lot of hard questions, didn't I?
But you're still...
I asked you a lot of hard questions, and I hate to tell you, sir, you flunked them one after another. Let's be honest. You came out here posing like the Gospels were not historically reliable. And so I said, fine, give me the test you used to determine historicity. What are the studies that you've done on the New Testament to convince you that the Gospels are not reliable? And what did you give me, sir? You gave me a goose egg. That's what you gave me, Zippo. And you're right, I opened up on you after you had the audacity to expose yourself like that. You did it, I didn't do it, you did it. I didn't judge you, you judged yourself, sir. I asked you, what have you studied? You told me C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity. I said, good. Sir, that book has nothing to do with the historicity of the Gospels.
I said that there was nothing that which backed it up.
And I asked you what tests. What tests? Oh, fine, tell me now. Correct me.
It's a lack of backing up.
So what is the little bit that does support their reliability that you found?
I don't see any little bit
Good. It's total trash. Jesus never existed. Is that your honest intellectual conclusion? He never existed?
I'm not saying that.
All right, then what's your historical evidence that Jesus ever graced the planet?
From other texts.
Like what?
Dead Sea Scrolls?
Dead Sea Scrolls, he's not even in there, sir.
Sorry.
Yeah, so am I. I'm real sorry also. You want to dig your ditch bigger, sir? Go ahead. Or are you going to agree with me? You basically have tucked tail and run from your Southern Baptist upbringing. Or have you really studied the facts? Have you really gone into manuscript evidence? Have you really gone into archaeology? Have you really studied literary style in order to figure out what is the literary style of the Gospels? Or have you bought into some snide attitude at University of Arizona? Oh man, it's all just a bunch of garbage. Let's be honest. You've been honest with me. What's the study that you've done?
I already explained.
A goose egg.
I have nothing left to say.
Now, there is a way to falsify Jesus. All you got to show is Jesus didn't rise from the dead. The Apostle Paul points that out very clearly in 1 Corinthians 15. He writes, if Christ is not risen from the dead, we're a pack of fools for believing in him. So all you got to do, sir, is study the Gospels. Study the evidence that he really died, that he really rose from the dead, and ask yourself, does the evidence point to him being reliable or not? And if he rose from the dead, you can trust him. He's not going to rip you off. Maybe some Southern Baptists will rip you off, but I'm not out here asking you to put your faith in Southern Baptists. I'm saying Jesus Christ, he's reliable. Now, I happen to know some of the Southern Baptists here at the University of Arizona, and they're tremendously reliable people. Jesus is more reliable than you and me put together. Wouldn't you like to believe in him?
I really don't care.
Why?
Why? I have no motivation.
Well, don't you celebrate life?
Yeah.
Well, if you celebrate life, and Christ celebrates life so incredibly, and offers eternal life in heaven, why wouldn't you want to pursue it?
Well, I don't have any motivation that I can see to do it.
Come on now, if you get sick enough, you're going to go to a hospital and pay the best doctors you can to get you well.
Then on my deathbed, I'll probably be ready to believe in Christ because I'll know I'm sick enough to die.
Oh yeah?
I'm being honest.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
If I'm going to die, then I'll see the doctor for that, I guess.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Now, if I were to say to you, I'd love to be your friend 20 years from now, would you question the sincerity of my desire to be your friend?
It depends on what 20 years from now came about. I mean, if
2,365
really, like if you were absolutely alone 20 years from now and really, really wanted a friend, then I know that you'd be very sincere in wanting me to be your friend.
If I today stand here and say, I really would love to be your friend, not now, but 20 years from now, I think there would be a word to describe me, wouldn't there be?
What would you consider that word to be?
Hypocrisy. Play acting. Lying to you and to myself. I'd really love to get to know you 20 years from now. Ah, give me a break. Hey God, hey Jesus, I'd really like to get to know you just before I kick out of here. I think there is a question of sincerity here, isn't there?
Probably.
Good. So that's why I hope and pray you'll really read the scriptures. And if you have honest intellectual questions about the historical reliability, sir, I could promise you there's more than enough evidence that the Gospels are historically reliable. Don't get all caught up in the inerrancy thing and the infallibility thing. Just look at it hard. You need to know whether this Jesus really lived, taught, died, and rose from the dead. So come up with some tests. Now, I use tests 4. Literary style, internal consistency, archaeological evidence, and manuscript evidence. Think of those. Internal consistency. Are there contradictions that show, these guys were confused? No, there's a tremendous internal consistency.
I have a question for you.
Yep.
Now, I'm recalling very vaguely, mind you, which is why I'm asking you. Is it not true that the Bible was constructed and certain books that were not consistent were dropped?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Then my question is,
you bet,
is that if the modern Bible was constructed so it is consistent, how can you trust the fact that it's consistent and use that as a test? Because if it was purposely made where certain parts were dropped out because of inconsistency, then how can you state that now the newer, more consistent version is true because of consistency? If you made it that way. Or not you, but you know what I mean.
Fair question. Very good question. I like it. You're thinking. I respect that. How were those 27 New Testament books put together? It was a long process. 3 tests were used. Was it written by an apostle or by someone who knew an apostle? Apostolic authority was important, one of the 12. Mark knew Peter. Luke knew Paul, and he was like the 13th apostle. So that was the first test. Second test was, did it hold to the orthodox Christian faith? And the third test was it used around the Mediterranean, around the known world? In other words, this was not a decision by one church in Rome or in Alexandria. So those 3 tests were used. And over a period of 100 to 200 years, those 27 New Testament books were used with such great regularity that it was a no-brainer. These are the 27 New Testament books. The books that were excluded, you got to read them.
I have not actually, and I would like to. I've just never been able to.
Good. Check them out. And what's going to become so exciting for you to see is they are mythologists. They are off-the-wall fantasies. Jesus comes out of the tomb in one of them, sitting on some angel's shoulders, and the cross comes out behind them, and Jesus' head goes up into the clouds. I mean, it is such embroidered language, such fairy tale mythology. It's incredible. Second point, Dan Brown quotes one of those Gospels in the Da Vinci Code as the basis for Mary Magdalene marrying Christ and them having kids. Now, the Gospel that he quotes is the Gospel of Philip, a Gnostic Gospel. The Gnostic Gospels were based on Gnostic philosophy, which taught the physical is evil and the spiritual is good. And obviously, the Old Testament and Jesus taught, no. The physical is not evil. Sex is not dirty. It's a gift from God. Our bodies are gifts from God. The spiritual is also a gift from God. Both are equally important. So those Gnostic Gospels, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of the Nazarene, those Gnostic Gospels were rejected, not by some Council of Nicaea, the way Dan Brown writes, baloney, but by the worldwide church in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd century that read those Gospels and said, I'm sorry, it contradicts what we know about Christ. So that's the process that took place. Dan Brown is totally wrong when he says Constantine and the Council of Nicaea decided what was going to be in the New Testament. That was not even part of the Council of Nicaea. The issue at the Council of Nicaea was, how do you relate God the Son to God the Father? It was a Trinitarian question. The New Testament canon was not even part of the debate at the Council of Nicaea. That affirmation of the 27 books of the New Testament occurred at the Council of Carthage and the Council of Hippo Regius in North Africa in 393 and 397 AD. So Dan Brown is ripping it off the wall and throwing it. It's just not true, historically.
Okay, well, I actually have a class. So.
Thank you so much for talking.
It's a pleasure talking with you.
Good to meet you, sir.
Have a good one.
You bet.
In this conversation, the atheist student raises Anselm's ontological argument. which suggests that if we can imagine the greatest possible being, God, then that being must exist in reality, because existing in reality is greater than just existing in our minds. While philosophers like Nietzsche criticize this idea by saying that existence isn't necessarily a quality that adds to greatness, it's important to recognize that the ontological argument is just one of many arguments for God's existence. For those who find the ontological argument tricky, other philosophical arguments like the cosmological argument, which suggests that everything that begins to exist has a cause and therefore the universe must have a first cause, and the moral argument, which points to the existence of objective moral values as evidence of a moral lawgiver, are often more convincing. These arguments provide a broader perspective on why belief in God is reasonable, showing that the question of God's existence can be approached in many different ways. The student then shares their journey from a Southern Baptist upbringing to atheism, mentioning that they weren't moved by the Bible, even after reading it multiple times. This kind of questioning is a common part of many people's spiritual journeys, and it's important to encourage this honest search for answers. The Bible itself recognizes this longing for meaning, as seen in Ecclesiastes 3:11, which says that God has set eternity in the human heart, a deep desire for purpose that goes beyond our everyday experiences. The student also expresses doubts about relying on Jesus and the Bible, wondering if the Bible is more trustworthy than any other book. It's important to highlight that Christianity isn't just based on a book. It's built on the historical reality of Jesus Christ. Even non-Christian sources like the writings of Tacitus and Josephus provide evidence of Jesus' existence and crucifixion, grounding the Christian faith in actual historical events. Central to this conversation is the resurrection of Jesus. As 1 Corinthians 15:17 states, "If Christ has not been raised, your faith is futile." Christianity hinges on this event, and the evidence for the resurrection, supported by eyewitness accounts and early Christian writings, offers a solid foundation for belief. When the student questions the Bible's reliability, it's helpful to explain that the Gospels have been rigorously tested through textual criticism, with thousands of manuscripts showing their consistency over centuries. Scholars look at things like internal consistency, archaeological evidence, and manuscript support to confirm the Bible's credibility. Faith isn't just about believing without evidence. It's based on reasonable trust. As Hebrews 11:1 explains, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. While historical facts about Jesus' life and resurrection provide a solid base, faith goes further. It's about trusting in a relationship with a living God. The student's lack of interest in pursuing a relationship with Christ is something many people struggle with. Using Pascal's wager, we can argue that exploring the possibility of God's existence is worthwhile because the potential reward, eternal life, far outweighs any risks. Choosing not to seek answers simply because of a lack of motivation could mean missing out on a deeper sense of purpose and the joy that faith in Christ can bring. The student also suggests that the Bible might have been altered to make it appear flawless. It's important to clarify that the process of forming the Bible, known as canonization, was guided by principles like apostolic authorship, consistency with core Christian beliefs, and widespread acceptance among early Christian communities. This wasn't about editing to manipulate, but about preserving the most authentic teachings of Jesus. Ultimately, this conversation shows that the journey toward faith often involves wrestling with challenging questions and doubts. It's crucial to encourage an open-minded exploration of these issues and to remind skeptics that the search for truth is a lifelong journey. The resurrection of Jesus remains the cornerstone of Christian belief, and the evidence supporting it invites everyone to consider its deeper implications. Let's continue to approach these questions with open hearts and minds, trusting that our pursuit of truth will lead us closer to understanding.